What's going on, gang? Welcome to episode 20 of the Becoming Limitless podcast. I'm joined today by a very special guest and a good friend of mine, Nicky. Nicky is a life designer who specializes in helping people achieve freedom, fulfillment, and financial success using a new approach to life planning. He's known for his globally featured, groundbreaking concepts, the failed human experience model, the progression of success theory, and the alternative life planning method, which we're going to dive in today. Real quick, I know Jay from I'm going to run the quick story, brother, before I let you dive into it. I
Yeah.
actually, before I came to Colombia, I think it was the Digital Nomad Facebook page where I saw you made that post about looking for like-minded people who were interested in personal growth, development, interested in building themselves and their businesses, and weren't necessarily looking for just like groups to party with and just mess around with. You're wanting to be serious and really work on developing yourself, which you had started like doing this type of thing in Panama with a different mastermind and an entrepreneurial type mastermind program. And so I saw Jay's post. I was like, this guy, I'm on the same page as this guy. I want to get to know this man. I messaged him. He started, like I said, this mastermind program in Medellin, which was super great, connected with a lot of awesome people, learned a lot. And then eventually we actually ended up being roommates last year in Medellin, which was absolutely amazing. And just wanted to give you guys this quick tidbit that I trust this man. He's a good friend now and have definitely learned a lot from him. So I'm super excited for him to share all his wisdom with you all. So just one more time, thank you so much again for coming on, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I'm excited. I love what you're doing with the podcast, as I love the energy. I can only imagine that whoever's listening to this is getting a ton of value. If you haven't been on the past episodes, I promise you are going to on this one. No, just kidding. Just a quick disclaimer. Yeah, I used to live with you, of course, and to your audience in Medellin, where we had this beautiful house and setup that was built for podcasting. That is not the case in my scenario at the moment. I am now in a tiny little surf town in Panama, which is where I spend the other half of my life in most cases. And I am at the mercy of quiet little surf town daily scenarios like the one concrete truck that comes once every year driving by right now in this moment. So just as a disclaimer, there is going to be a little bit of noise as we go through this, but I do promise I'm going to try to just nail down a bunch of value for you and your listeners, just to talk a little bit about everything that I have going on, and just hoping to really give as much as I possibly can in the short time we have here together. I'll give a quick backstory about myself and how I got here today. Essentially, I'm originally from Canada, and I was working in real estate for 10 years in Vancouver, and I ended up becoming a top producing realtor in Vancouver towards the end of my career. And at one point, I just became totally burnt out. I was working 350, 360 days a year. The money was great, but I was just unfulfilled, overworked, and just, to be completely honest, miserable. I often talk about having these different tanks as a human being that we need to fill in terms of our physical health and mental health and our relationships and our financial tank, of course. And while my financial tank was overflowing, I was completely depleted in every other area of my life. I was just completely worn down and essentially getting to a point where I hit rock bottom, and I knew that something needed to change. Fast forward now, 5 years later, I'm coaching. And what I'm going to be sharing with you in this podcast of what I do as a coach is not necessarily what I am certified or licensed as, although I do have licenses and certifications in a bunch of different areas of coaching, but it's really from my own personal experience of just being in a place where I, at the bottom line, just was not happy, and knowing that I need to make a change and trying to figure out and navigate what that looks like to create what I would say now is my dream life. And when I say dream life, I'm not talking about penthouses and private jets. I'm talking about a little surf town, very quiet, friendly community where I can surf every day and I work the amount of hours that allow me to live the life I want for myself. As a life designer, as Brandon mentioned, essentially what I do on the most basic level is I help people to design lives they love, or I often say their dream life. And it's very important that I say, when I say dream life, that can mean anything for any different individual. And probably the biggest part of what I do with the program, which I'm going to share with you guys shortly, is understanding that we're all different and that the life we all want for ourselves is different. And for one person, if that's the penthouse and the private jet, of course, I completely respect that. And there's a way that we can help you to achieve that goal in that life. For others, it might be, I want to spend more time with my family and I don't want to have to drive 2 hours to commute to work every day. And if that's the case, there's a way to build that life. But obviously, the approaches are going to be very different. I think typically how I like to share what I do is sharing a couple of the concepts that Brandon mentioned that I have been recognized for in the past couple of years. The first being the failed human experience model, which is essentially when I got towards the end of my real estate career, I had this rock bottom moment, and a very interesting question came up for me, which was, how did I even end up here to begin with? How is it that I'm originally from Ontario, my entire family is on the other side of the country. I'm working in real estate, which was never passionate about. I liked the money, but I was never passionate about it. I was buying these cars and apartments and all these things and material items were never important to me. I grew up in a small town on a beach. I was always a very simple person. I still am, and I'm lucky that I found my way back to that life. But I just was hit with this question where all of this began with this coaching in my own personal journey of how did I get here? And this really made me want to look at my own personal life story to actually see, out of curiosity, how did I get here? And as I reversed the tape of looking at my life from where I was in that place in that moment, this was in 2018, and I started to reverse what I learned, where the biggest thing was, and there's different steps along the way, but what I realized was I would say, misguided path taking began in high school. And I remember very clearly that when it became time for us to decide what we want to do after school, whether it's go to university, start a career, get a job, go to college, whatever it was, I just remember that I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I remember it was at that point where I started traveling a bit. I fell into I lived a different path at that time. My parents got divorced. And of course, there was like a rocky road, as many of us teenagers can have in these situations. But what I had realized was the big thing, this idea of this failed human experience model, was that I thought was unique to my own story, and later realizing, especially now coaching for a few years and speaking to hundreds or if not thousands of people, that my story was not unique, and that there's so many people in the world who end up in a place maybe 30, 25 years down the road where they look up and they say, what the hell happened? How did I get here? How did my life become this? And I realized how important it is for me to share about this idea of what happens in high school, because this is not unique to my own story, and this is really the scenario for the majority of us as human beings. And the reason why I would say we're dealing with an unhappiness epidemic at the moment, and why the majority of the population is feeling lost, stuck, or unfulfilled. And the reason for that begins at the point that we are asked essentially the most important question of our lives, typically at the age of 15 or 16 years old. Usually when we're in grades 10 or 11 in high school, we're already expected to choose not only what we're going to do after high school, but essentially our entire life path at that time. Now, when we're 15 years old, we don't have the life experience, most importantly, to know what we want, what we don't want. We don't have the mental maturity, the emotional maturity. We don't have any of these things, yet we're expected to design our entire life at that point. And when I talk about the failed human experience model, what I talk about is this idea that we're asked this impossible question. Sorry, it's a nice offshore wind coming in right now.
No worries.
Hopefully it's not clogging up the mic too much. And what happens is, essentially, because we can't answer this question, because we don't have the life experience and the maturity, typically one of three things happens. First of all is we answer incorrectly. We say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer because they make a lot of money, but we have no idea what that actually entails or what the day-to-day life of a doctor or lawyer looks like. So we go through the process and we become one, and then we realize, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I was talking to one of my best friends, and she's a doctor, just finished schooling after whatever it is, 10 years. And I was very surprised to hear her say that exact thing to me. She said, I just did not think that it was going to be this. And she has a child, and she's having a difficult time, but we are gauging that process of how to redirect and create the life she wants. But it's a very real thing. We don't really understand what this thing is, and we're going to spend the rest of our life and probably go in debt hundreds of thousands of dollars to create this career that we might end up saying, you know what, this was the wrong decision. Number two, which is very common, is we allow someone else to influence the decision or make the decision for us. I know many people like this. It could be our parents, it could be our friends, it could be a teacher, but someone else essentially, because we don't know how to answer the question, it's our parents saying that you need to do this or you need to do that. Immediately, we begin living someone else's life from that point. Or number three, which is what happened to me, which I call is following the default path, which is following the societal conditioning that we're all told to believe, which is chasing essentially financial success, which is just make a lot of money, follow the typical default process that we as human beings are told to follow, which unfortunately doesn't take us to a life of happiness and fulfillment, which I think many of us realize once we achieve these things. With this failed human experience model, meaning that we're asked this impossible question, and because we can't answer it, typically one of these three things happens, which all end up leading to us living a life that we didn't choose for ourselves, at least not competently or confidently. And then, so what happens is we end up in a place, of course, then life takes over. We make this decision, and then it's boom, we're in school, we're learning, we meet a partner, we get married, we have children, we buy a house, we're in debt, life flies by, and then all of a sudden, 30 years old, 35 years old, we lift our head up and we say, exactly like myself, what the hell happened? And that's where the thing that I think is most important that I like to share with my audience and with your audience is that if you're in a place, if you're in your anywhere from your mid-20s to mid-40s or later, and you're in a place where you feel like you're lost, stuck, or unfulfilled, the most important thing that I want to tell people is that it is not because you did something wrong. It's because you did everything exactly the way essentially you were supposed to, which is following this default path that we are told to answer this impossible question, and essentially we're not given any instructions along the way. So that was the first kind of big interesting piece of my personal puzzle, that and helping other people of this isn't something where we did something wrong. This is and that's why I call this the failed human experience model, is because the set of instructions or the conventional way of life that we're told to follow, I believe, is completely incorrect. How can you expect a 15-year-old kid to choose his entire life path? And of course, they're going to get to a place at some point where they want to question things. Now, that's where the second big piece to this puzzle comes in, is that if you're in a place where you're feeling, I say lost, stuck, and unfulfilled, but whatever it could be, if you just want more, maybe you're doing fine, but you want to get past surviving and you want to thrive. That if you have this feeling where something inside of you is telling me this isn't really it, that is a beautiful thing. I call it the internal nudge, because the reality of the situation is that many of us feel this, but there's so many of us who maybe now we have children, now we have a family, we have a job, and we just ignore that kind of little flame inside of ourselves that's saying something doesn't feel right, and I think we should make a change into a happier life. And another thing I like to tell people is this: a lot of these people who don't create the life they want for themselves, they're amazing people. And the reason for that is they're not putting themselves first. They're saying, you know what, I understand what you're saying, but I have children and they're the priority, or my partner is a priority, or my job's a priority. And the problem is they're not putting themselves first, when in reality, when we put ourselves first, we're then able to show up for other people on the absolute highest level. So it's this thing where these, the people that you want to talk to, I completely understand why, but you are doing a disservice not only to yourself, but to the people around you if you're not showing up as the best version of yourself, which only comes to life when you're living the life that you want for yourself. But it's this idea of once we feel this internal nudge, this midlife time, is that we act on it and we find the tools at this point, as opposed to just keep blowing it out and ignoring it, because eventually it will go away and now you're destined to live your entire life unhappy. And that's really the saddest thing that I see, is that there's so many people who go in life who have this nudge where they just ignore it, where if you feel this, if you have these feelings, these aren't negative feelings. This is a beautiful thing where this is your opportunity to say, okay, something's not right here and I want to make a change. And the part that I want to bring to the puzzle for these people is the tools that can allow them to create that change. Because if we look at the failed human experience model, the beautiful thing is that when we become 25 years old, 30, in my case, I'm 38 now, so I was 33 when this all happened for me. So I think for men, maturity is a little bit later, but now at this time when I'm 33, I do have the life experience and I do have the emotional and mental maturity to know what it is that I want with my life. It's one thing to not answer the question in the first part of life because we don't know, we're unable to, but it's more important that we go back and revisit this question at a time in our lives when we're finally capable of answering it, and then having the tools to correctly answer it at that time. So now maybe you don't know what you want for a career, but you probably know what you don't want. If you're at this point in your life where you don't love your job, then you say, okay, I know what I don't want. And that's a great place to start. I don't want to be sitting in an office commuting 2 hours a day or an hour a day and working 9 to 5 at a job that I'm just not fulfilled. I know that I don't want to continue to not see my family for 10 hours a day or live for the weekends and essentially drink for 2 days a week because I'm trying to escape the reality that I'm living in, which I can also relate to on a very deep level for trying to find fulfillment and happiness in those types of ways back when I was making a lot of money, when I was trying to fill a hole with something that was impossible to fill it with because the reality was it just wasn't that. So the first step is understanding this failed human experience model, and then understanding that when we get to this point that it's not a bad thing, it is time to make this change. And then the third part is this program, which essentially is the tools to provide people to help them to answer the question finally when they're able to. And that's what I call the alternative life planning method. This is essentially a set of life instructions that we can follow because I don't think we're ever actually given life instructions. There's this default path that I just talked about that many of us follow, but there isn't really a set of instructions for how to live life, let alone a set of instructions for how to live a fulfilled life for us as an individual. As I talked about in the failed human experience model, what the biggest problem is that we end up living someone else's life, or a life that we didn't correctly choose because we chose incorrectly, or someone else chose for us, or we followed society's definition of success. So the alternative life planning method, this approach that I take, is all about the individual who's going through the program and what does the life that they want for themselves personally look like. Now, there's other parts I don't want to try to wrap this up in 30 minutes or whatever we want to do. Of course, there's more things in depth in the program, but also I talk about in the failed human experience, we have the big question, the most important question we're ever asked, which is, what do you want to do? This is like the 15-year-old question that's impossible to answer. But there's two questions also that we are never asked that I believe are more important and questions that we should be answering before we answer the question of what do you want to do, which are who am I and what do I want my life to look like? I think once we can understand those things, I think the third question should be, okay, what do I want to do professionally that is going to allow me to achieve the life that I want for myself? So rather than at 15 years old, we're conditioned to spend our entire life thinking about our career. And what happens is we get the career and we get the job, and then we allow our personal life to fall secondary around our professional life, which I think is completely backwards. Where the approach that I take in this alternative life planning method with these tools is we say, okay, we're going to help to finally answer the question, what do I want to do with my life professionally? But before we do that, there's two more important questions that we're going to dive into. Number one is, who am I? So there's a big section on mainly self-awareness, understanding who we are on the absolute deepest level, why we do the things we do, what do we truly want and need on the absolute deepest levels, so that we can then align our true selves with the life that we want for ourselves. Then the biggest part of the program is life. So it's self-life and business. So part two is answering the question, what life do I want for myself? I think that's the number one question of, do I want to travel? Do I want to spend time with my family? Do I want to stay in my hometown? Because obviously the way to get these things is going to be very different. And then finally, for people is the question, what do I want to do for work? But not necessarily what do I want to do, but what is the vehicle in my professional life that is going to allow me to get the life that I want for myself? So it's almost like this reverse approach to life design, which is why I call myself a life designer, is essentially reversing the entire approach that we currently take, which is step one, figuring out what the job is that you want to do, which, by the way, is already an incorrect thing right from the get-go. But first of all, who are we, which we never talk about in school, especially from a young age. What does the life that I want for myself look like? And then finally, what is the vehicle that's going to allow me to live the life that I want? And then in the program itself, it's just a bunch of different exercises and questioning process that I take clients through that helps them to answer the three big questions. Who am I? What do I want my life to look like? And what is the career or the job that is going to allow me to get it? In most cases, on the professional side of the program, it's about helping people quit jobs and start businesses, because a lot of what I do is helping people achieve more freedom and fulfillment and even financial success. And the best way to achieve that, I have found, has been to start a business. So helping people transition out of employment and into entrepreneurship, essentially helping them figure out what job do they want to do. The golden question that we couldn't answer at 15, I have a system of all the different options that you could do to start a business if you were to start a business, or other options as well. How to start the business, how to start it, how to grow it, how to scale it, how to transition out of your current job and create the life that you want for yourself. So that's just a big spiel of everything, just to put it on the table of I'm very passionate about this conversation because I do truly feel there are many of us in life right now who aren't where we want to be. And I think it's so important that we understand that it's not, because many of us, like myself, I know for sure I felt like I did something wrong, which really that isn't the case. It's that this life design model we're given by default is not setting us up for individual fulfillment and happiness, I believe. So yeah, it's a very passionate topic of mine. That's why when you let me loose, man, I'm just going for it.
No, man, I'm smiling because that was amazing. It was amazing. And there's so much to unpack there that I want to get into, but I genuinely couldn't agree with you anymore. And I have some questions and also points I want to highlight. And that was one point you just ended off there with, by not beating yourself up for the people that are like catching themselves like, how the hell did I get here? And it's almost in the sense of, as long as, like, one of the most important aspects that we can do is to continue to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves if this feels aligned and if this feels right. And to bring it back a little bit to when you are 15, I would love if the 15-year-olds had this process that you've created and they could start there in this order. But for even the 15-year-olds or the people that started with this other like default model, it seems as if no matter what they choose at 15 isn't necessarily a problem. Even if they choose something that they absolutely hate, it's not like that's bad or wasted time, because now, like you alluded to, now you know what you don't want to do. Now you know what you don't want to do going forward, and you can still capitalize um, capitalize on choosing the right career that will give you passion. So I think what I'm trying to get at is to not beat yourself up. If you chose whatever the career path or the major in college that wasn't even close to actually what you wanted because of your parents' influence or society, you can reframe it in the sense of like, now you know exactly what you don't want to do, and so you can get closer to finding what you do want to do. However, obviously, best case scenario is we know exactly, or we're very close to understanding what we want to do with our lives at that age at 15 years old. But question, would you, is your goal, obviously you're trying to help people, whatever it is, late 20s, 30s, you want to help people find the happiness and fulfillment, and maybe help them take a step back and look at their life and answer those questions that you would talk about, their sense of self, what do they want and what do they want to do in their lives. So would you want to give your process, like, would, is it your hopes that 15-year-olds or people in high school would have your model instead of the, like, the default model that you were talking about? Is that kind of a long-term goal that you would love to see happen, or are you always thinking that this type of model and these questions, introspective questions, are for people that are maybe a little bit more emotionally mature at like mid 20s, late 20s, 30s?
Yeah, I fully agree with what you said about, and that's the thing that comes down to the life experience, which I think is probably the most important. And of course, the mental and emotional maturity. Like when I say mental maturity, like our prefrontal cortex was essentially our decision maker isn't fully developed until they say as late as the age of 25. Yet here we are at 15 with the most important decision of our lives. So I think no matter what, exactly like you said, at 15, it's going to be hard to know for sure what we want. But I do think there's something very valuable in teaching our youth and our next generation at a young age, first of all, the self-awareness of learning who you are and putting some more value on what the life you want for yourself could look like, as opposed to only ever talking about the career.
Yeah.
Because I think at that point, there's many paths that you could take, even if they're incorrect, that you're still on the highway to creating the life you want for yourself. And of course, we don't know much at 15. We haven't traveled. We don't know if we want to travel. There are so many missing points, but I think the biggest message that, and I do want to get this program, it will be designed in a different way, because right now I coach mostly adults. I have done youth coaching in the past, and it is, I think, very effective because our youth are incredible. They want support, they want tools, and they aren't being given them. Sometimes when you work with older people, and even like myself, we can be in our ways and we've learned things a certain way, where the youth is, please help me and support me as much as you can. And I think it's, for us, this is our future. And I think we need to give them the tools to allow them to create the lives that they want for themselves. So I think the biggest message that I do want to work with to get to youth in the future is going to be that you have to build the life that you want. Maybe that's incorrect, but only, and how to put the priority on personal happiness and how that is not selfish. How if we're unhappy because we're living someone else's life, we're not doing anyone good, including them, because then we're not even happy living our life to show up for them. So I think there are key concepts that would be very powerful for the youth to learn that I was never taught at that age, of the importance of building a life that you want for yourself. But I think the real value in what I teach and what I share in this program is definitely for people around my age or kind of mid 20s who have now gained that, exactly like you said, they've now learned what they don't want. They have the life experience, they have the maturity. And really to say to these people, your life is not half over. Don't just forget about this feeling. Your life, the first half of your life is just for play. It's just for messing up. It's for learning. Essentially, your life is just beginning now. Now you've gained all the resources and information about yourself that you need. Simply, we just need to sit down, revisit that question, and we can actually, now is the starting point to building your dream life, because you have all of the tools, aside from kind of the questioning and the exercises, which really help you go deep in terms of figuring out on the most deepest level and gaining extreme clarity in what it is that you want. But it's just the idea of working with people at this age, of really promoting to revisit that question and say you can change your life. Yes, you might have a job, and I know you spent 5 or 10 years in this career and probably spent all this money on school to get it, but if you're not happy, it doesn't make sense. And actually, I think once we make that mental shift that we want something different, everything falls into place much easier than I think we originally realized.
Yeah. No, man, I couldn't agree more. And I'm curious about that question, that sense of self question. What are, do you have any examples about the type of questions you can ask yourself, like for people listening, that has them get more familiar with their sense of self? Like when people, like, for example, when you're saying like it's so important, the self-awareness, and I totally agree. Do you have any like questions or quick things that people can, I don't know, some type of prompts or journal entries or just questions for yourself to sit with, to be like, who, like when you said, who am I? Like it's a heavy loaded question. Like where do people even start when they ask themselves that type of question?
Yeah. What I'll say, I don't actually have, I think for even just the self-awareness questioning process, I think there's 50 questions. And this is years of learning as much about how to gain self-awareness as possible, reading all the books, like just online, searching the internet, podcasts, the deal, courses, everything. And this whole program is pulling out all of the best tools from everything, whether it's my own personal experience or things that I've learned online or somewhere, and package it into a place for this specific purpose. While just because I'm going to have I probably do know all of them, but because you're putting me on the spot, I can't think of one. I'm not saying that because I'm going to hold any of them back. But what I will say is if there is anyone in your audience who wants the program, because this truly is at this point in my life's work, I do make money through coaching. I work with people one-on-one as I'm going to start leading retreats here in Panama this coming year and in Medellin. But the program itself is not something that I'm doing to make money. It's to provide an alternative set of life instructions to help people to become more happy and fulfilled, more importantly. The program itself, I'm still on the fence. I know that you and I have had this conversation at the breakfast table a few times about how I'm going to be giving this out. And I've been flip-flopping on for sure how I'm going to do it, mainly because when you give, like the idea of if I'm going to give the program itself out for free, because it can become devalued when people don't pay for something. And this is a very serious program. There's 70 plus exercises. It's like a Bible, this thing. It's massive, which is why I coach people through it. But for sure, I will say to your audience, if they want it, I'm happy to give them the program for free. And just based on this, because I can't answer that question, because it's a very valid question of what are we actually talking about here? This kind of, what are these questions? What are these exercises? So I'll explain just in 2 minutes what the program is, not to pitch it to your audience, but in case they want it for free, they can have it, but just to explain a little bit more about what it is. So the program itself is broken into 3 sections, as I mentioned. So self, life, and business. The first section, and each section has 3 parts. So section 1, self, starts with self-belief, which is the idea of helping people to first, most importantly, before we do anything, believe that it is possible to create a life beyond their wildest dreams. Because if we carry these self-limiting beliefs, and I assume and hope you talk about in most of your podcasts, as we all do in this industry, the power of self-limiting beliefs and how real those really are, and how we think about ourselves and our mindset, especially with becoming limitless. I'm sure you talk about this all the time, is like the mindset. Like we are our only limits, you know? So before we do anything, I can give someone all the tools in the world, but on the deepest level, if you don't truly believe that I would say, deserve it, that's the real thing for many of us. We sabotage ourselves because we don't believe we deserve to have the things that we do actually. We all deserve a beautiful life. No matter what you've done in your life or been through or what you think about yourself, everyone deserves to live a beautiful life. And there's a first process that is most important, that we have to have the belief. And so it's maybe 10 exercises all about how different ways, like tangible step-by-step tools. It's like a workbook style program that you go through, and it's going to help you to tactical ways of removing self-limiting beliefs, how to improve confidence. It's super powerful stuff, to be honest. Also on my Instagram at Nicky Life Designs, I'm sharing all of these steps in a video series. I've been doing it for a few weeks now. So if someone just listening to this, if immediately you're like, I don't know what this guy's talking about, I don't understand, you can simply hop over to my Instagram, watch one of my videos, and each video is a different exercise that I share in this program. So first is self-belief, then it's a self-awareness of understanding, of course, who we are. There's I think 50 questions, which essentially is asking you, who are you, in 50 different ways. Then there's, I think, 18 to 20 exercises that you go through to increase self-awareness in every different area. Parental influence. So taking into consideration how I was raised by my parents and what belief system did that create and how did that shape me as who I am today. What's another one? What are my top 5 human needs? What are my personality traits? What are my triggers? So it's looking at all these different areas of self to just poke around a little bit to try to gain as much awareness of who we are on the absolute deepest level, because once we know on the deepest level who we are, we can then align ourselves. Like, this is really about the process of alignment, this whole process that I take people through. It's not just about what do you want to do for work, it's about what is a life who am I? What is the life that I want for myself? And what is going to allow me to create that? So essentially, we're moving ourselves into alignment in every area of life between self, life, and business. And section 3 is self-empowerment, which is essentially is the physical, tangible tools to help you to start living, to start becoming the person who is capable of now creating the life we want, which a lot of it is talking about habits, developing good habits, removing bad habits, setting up a routine, a lot of the stuff that you and I have done together with goal setting, things like that, of just setting up like tangible systems, because we all know we have to make changes ourselves if we want things in our life to change. So this is the takeaways of improving our habits, becoming the person capable of creating the life we want for ourselves. And then in the life part, there's 3 different parts. There's life design, life adjustment, which is just a lot of like understanding where we currently at in our life, what needs to change, what does the life I want, and again, just an awareness process of creating, like, what does the life, like envisioning the life that I want for myself look like, and does the path that I'm on, is it taking me to that life, is it not? And then part 3 is all about business, how to start a business from A to Z, gaining clarity. So it's business clarity, business strategy, business execution. So business clarity is all about what is the business that I want to start? What do I enjoy doing? Or even what kind of work do I want to start? And then strategy, how to start it, marketing, business, sales, all that stuff. And then creating a process to actually start the business. So it's really, if someone is sitting at a desk right now and they say, I don't know what's going on, I don't know where to go, I hate my job, I'm not satisfied with where I'm at, but I just don't know what the next step is, that's what this thing is. It's a very big idea, it's hard to explain, but essentially it's taking someone just from being in a place where they're not living the life they want, which is directly related to how I was at one point in my life, and giving them every step along the way that's going to get them the exact life that they want for themselves through this process. So super long answer because I can't give you the specific questions, but I just want to, the only reason I want to share that is not to pitch it. I'm not here to sell anyone anything. I don't, even if you take the program, I'm not sending you 100 emails to buy my coaching. That's not how I roll. I'm a no pressure guy. I am here to provide value. I'm here to live a fulfilled life. And what I've learned to live a fulfilled life is to support other people and give back. And I do that as much as possible. Of course, understanding that I need to eat to continue to push this message and this mission forward as I'm trying to do. But in terms of for your listeners, for the program, my top priority is getting this message into the world, letting people understand that if you feel lost, stuck, or unfulfilled, you're not alone. Like I thought I was. The majority of the population is feeling this way because of this default method that we're all following, and it's not your fault. That is, you did nothing wrong. It's the fact that you did everything the way that we're all told that we're supposed to. And now here's the tools to make the adjustments that will allow you to live the life that you want, not the life that your parents wanted you to live, not the default path of chasing success and all of these things. If those are the things you truly want, that's beautiful. Let's get them. In the program, I talk about what is on the deeper level of those things. If you want $1 million, what is it with that $1 million that you want? And do you need that $1 million? How many people that I coach who they make $1 million, they've started a business, they make $1 million plus a year, and their wish is to see their children more. And what they've come to realize is that I'm trying to work more to see my family more. My end goal is just to spend more time with my family. It's like, then none of this process makes sense. And that's why we really need to prioritize what does the life that I want for myself first look like, and then let's build the business I want. Because if we just focus on the business, what I've seen so many times is we build a prison for ourselves. And I did that in real estate. I was on call 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I was making great money, but I couldn't do anything with my life. So I followed this path of chasing the default path of becoming successful, focusing just on the thing that's going to make me successful and not getting the life that I wanted from that. And what happens with a lot of people who start a business or become successful is as they build their business, they build this prison around themselves because they've never asked themselves first, what's important to me personally? And if they were to have said, making sure that I spend 20 to 40 hours at least a week with my family, then you're probably going to build your business in a very different way than you are if you just hit the ground running and you do whatever it takes, where you're going to have different boundaries. You're going to be putting systems in from day one. Or maybe if the life you want is, I want to travel the world as a digital nomad. Well, of course, then you're not going to be taking an office job or starting a business that requires you to, whatever it is, be on your computer 10 hours a day, on your phone 10 hours a day. There's different ways to get that life. But what happens is we don't even take that into consideration most of the time.
I don't know about the audience listening if they're interested in this program, but I'm interested in this program. Bro, this just sounds absolutely amazing. And usually I feel like I have so many follow-up questions but you just answered everything so well, man, and so precisely and clearly about who you're trying to help, why you're trying to help them, the different aspects that are so important that we must come to face with in order for us to find that fulfillment, which is almost sounds like the job is the last, almost like the last on the list. It's what do I want my life to look like? What am I interested in? What do I want to do on a daily basis? And then what's the career and the job that can allow me to do those things? So it's like that part is secondary almost. Brother, I just really appreciate the work you're doing here, man. It's so important. And I was going to ask you, for the person, exactly what are the next steps for that person who's listening, who's feeling stuck, feeling unfulfilled? But you pretty much explained it. Starting this process of this program is the first way to go. The one thing I'm curious to ask you though is I feel like a difficult place for a lot of people who are in this corporate world, let's say they're young 30s, let's say they graduated from college, went to, I don't know, went to business school, something. Maybe they've been in their corporate career for 10 years or something. So they've worked their way up the ladder a decent bit. They're making decent money, six figures, 100 grand up to 200 grand a year. So I think this is one of the biggest downfalls of a lot of people is that they're in this place that's comfortable. They don't love their life and they actually probably don't like their life that much, but they're not at absolute rock bottom. And I think rock bottom can be a great thing for a lot of people because it forces them to take action and make changes because there's nothing else to risk because I'm already at rock bottom. What do I have to lose? So I think so many people are sitting and floating in this comfortable, complacent area of life that they're really not happy or fulfilled, but things they're not at rock bottom. So like for this person that's I don't want to have to start over with a new career, with a new business, because I'm already how can I give up this money and this security and this certainty and quote unquote safety? What do you tell that person that's sitting there? They're hearing you out, man, and they're like, fuck, this resonates, but I don't know if I can do it. What do you tell that person?
I think there is a big part of it about that internal nudge where I've talked about in a previous book and videos that I talk about is it's very difficult, I think, for someone externally, like myself or anyone really, to push someone to get to the point of wanting to make the change. I think that's a very personal, whether that's quitting drinking or smoking or fixing a relationship or changing your career. I think there's a point that we get to, or there's something that inside of us needs to happen. But that's why I talk so much, why I'm so passionate about this idea of the internal nudge and how we should listen to it, because it's different for other people. Essentially, we all know, but ideally what I've said is if in the program, if you have that internal nudge and you want to change, that's where I can meet people in this second half of life or late 20s or mid 20s who want to make the change with the tools. But it's very hard to convince someone to do it. However, when someone gets to that point, then absolutely there's people in place who can support that person. But I think there's a big decision internally that one needs to make. And I've actually saw you post a video about this recently, about the comfort thing, and it's so true. And I remember talking about it, sparked something that I talked about. It was like, I think I was on a tangent, something about how the system is very good at how it's designed to keep us just above broke, essentially, because then we have enough to eat. We don't necessarily need more. We become comfortable. But being broke, or we're talking about hitting rock bottom like I did, that was one of the best things to ever happen to me in my life, because now I am like, and it's hard to explain to people, but really I was in a bad place. My rock bottom was quite devastating. And it's also hard to explain to people who can't feel it how happy I am with what I have now in my life. And it doesn't mean that I've earned another $5 million. In fact, it's not about the money whatsoever. It's mostly been about simplifying my life, understanding what's truly important to me personally, and finding ways to bring those things, creating a strategy to bring it back into my life. But I think there is something very valuable about having this rock bottom, because there's so many of us who, like myself, there were years before where I was still unhappy, but I wasn't there enough. And it's a great question you asked, because there are many people in this place. Luckily for me, it got so bad that I had to change. I didn't have a choice. It was like that or I was going to die. There was nowhere to go from there. And that's why this internal nudge, sometimes it can whisper to us in the earlier days, like it did for me, and then you ignore it and then it comes back, and then sometimes it just disappears if you don't. So I think, to answer your question, it's a personal thing to begin with, about listening to that internal nudge when it comes up. When something's telling you that something doesn't really feel right, I feel like there's more, to act on it, and just to know that life can be absolutely beautiful. We're not really designed to think that way. You can have absolutely anything you want. And really, getting it is not that hard. It's more so about spending the time to understand, what is it that I want? And that's what the program does. It's not about the strategy, okay, make 100 business calls today and then do this tomorrow. It's about, no, what is the thing that I want? Because when we set our brain and we understand what the thing is that we want, naturally we're going to start moving in that direction. But the issue with so many of us, including myself for many years, is I didn't know what I wanted. I was falling in and out of 20, 30 different jobs, traveling. I had no idea until I sat down and said, okay, what do I want? I love surfing. Surfing needs to be in my life. It's when I'm the happiest. It's when I'm the healthiest. And I'm living in a big city. Community is very important. I need that. And I get this from this small town that I'm in, or when I find it. A healthy relationship with a partner is important to me. And luckily, just recently, I found that as well. But of course, it's like setting the GPS, but we're not putting in any specific address. The last thing that I want to say, because you reminded me of one other thing I wanted to talk about very quickly, is this idea of the progression of success theory. I also call it the success pyramid, which ties into this question that you're asking, which is, I think we're conditioned to believe that financial success is the thing that we should all be chasing. And being fortunate enough to have achieved financial success in my past, when I was in my real estate career, something that I learned was that is not getting you to the place of true success. Of course, everyone has their own definition for success, but I think in general, what I thought was like, okay, I've been instructed to make the money, buy the things, and then I'm going to have this feeling. Boy, was I wrong. It was the absolute complete opposite. It was rock bottom, actually. It was the complete opposite. Now, for someone who's listening to this, who might be in a place, because I know so many people in the world today are in a place where we're not talking like the first level of being survival and financial success. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not important if you're surviving or if you haven't reached this place, because I would have said bullshit. If you don't have it, it is the first thing. So I fully agree that it is the first thing, but it's not everything. And in my opinion, personally, I think that the first level of 3 levels of success is financial success. I think survival is number 1. If we are surviving, we are successful on that level. Now, financial success could mean you're a millionaire, which of course you're surviving. But what I've learned personally is achieving level 1 and being like, okay, remembering I felt duped. I've done everything that I was told to do by society. I went to school, I got the career, I found a career, I made great money, I did A, B, C, D, E, and I didn't get the result that I thought that I was promised. And that's where I really realized that there's other levels to success. And I think this kind of ties into people, like maybe they found that comfort in their career, but there are other levels. And I found level 2 is freedom. So level 1, financial success. Level 2 is finding freedom in your life. If you're able to travel more, spend more time with your family, whatever freedom means to you personally, which for me I was in real estate. I had financial success, but I had no freedom because I was working 360 days a year. And then you get caught in that loop of wanting to make money, and it's just not a nice place. So I think freedom, if you have that, is a higher level of financial success. Now, the nice thing to know about that is if for you, I'm not, and my whole thing is finding out with an individual client, what is it for you? I never tell anyone what your thing is, because if I do that, then we go right back to the initial problem of your friends or family telling you the life you should live. I don't do any of that. But if the thing is freedom, let's say for you, now that you know that there's another level of success, maybe you don't necessarily have to first achieve the financial success to get the freedom. You could just completely avoid financial success altogether. Which essentially, if you look at my story, I grew up on a beach in a small town. I was very happy. I got all mixed up in what I thought society wanted me to do with making money, and I did it. I realized it was nothing that I wanted personally. Now, full circle, I'm back on a beach in a small community. Of course, the weather's a lot nicer and the waves are bigger, so I did something right. But essentially, it's finding my way back, and financial success. I didn't have to make all that money to be where I am now. I don't like, it's not like that money got me here. The cost of living where I live now is considerably cheaper than it was originally when I started. So it doesn't mean that we need, the reason I'm trying to say this is maybe you can take a shortcut to reach success if your thing is I want, and that's why it's important. What is the life I want? If you want the penthouse and jet, okay, sure, but then we need to take this vehicle to get you those things. But that doesn't mean that you need a vehicle that's going to earn you $1 million a year if all you want to do is live on a beach and give back to the community and start a family and start a garden and live off the grid. That's a completely different lifestyle. And that's why first let's figure out what the life is. And the third one that I've learned personally is fulfillment. So that's, I think, the highest level that I found in success. And I think when I think of fulfillment and how to feel fulfilled is a lot of service and giving back and helping others. As cheesy as some people might think that is, I think I found it personally to really be true. And this is dealing with mental health things in the past, like things like depression, of this idea of when you take the focus off yourself and you put it on other people, you get something out of that. It's also why you see, I think, Warren Buffett or some of these people at 80, I don't even know if it's him for sure. I don't want to say if we're talking podcasts, but like a lot of these famous people who make these incredible incomes and have all of this wealth to eventually they end up giving it all away to a charity. I think at one point we get to a place in our life where we realize there's something more. And so I think it starts with financial success and then freedom and then fulfillment. So a long-winded answer going back to your thing of, for the person, if I'm talking to you and you're sitting and you have the comfortable job that you very respectfully deserve and earned, and you're thinking, what is this next thing? I think there are two more levels on that scale that are very beautiful, because I know many people who are at level one who are very financially successful but are completely miserable. They don't have any freedom, they don't have any sense of fulfillment. So I think there's always ways to improve, and I think it starts with the belief that I think the idea of striving for more is a beautiful thing personally. I think a lot of happiness comes from striving. I don't look at it from a place that I don't have enough or I want more, but there's something personally that I feel good about when I'm moving towards something, in whether some goal or whatever it might be. For me, the happiness is like knowing there's something else there. And I think, including myself, it's very, and why you probably have the Becoming Limitless podcast is because we have very limited mindsets. We're just conditioned that way as a human being. And I think it's so important to remind ourselves that your life might be good, but it can be so, like, I don't know if you swear on here, but it can be so amazing. It can really be bigger than you could ever envision it could be. And that, most importantly, going back to knowing that you deserve all of that. And I guess that's my 30-minute answer to your brief question.
No, brother, I absolutely love it, man. I absolutely love your answer, man. And no, that's 100%, brother. The only limits that we have are the ones that we place upon ourselves, right? There really is no ceiling except for the ceiling we place upon ourselves, brother. And that's one of those messages that I'm trying to get across to people on this podcast, because I believe that I say in Espanol, todo es posible. In English, anything and everything is possible. And I really want people to believe that, because when they can believe that, life is so exciting. And again, that doesn't mean you need to make all this money, have the jet, the penthouse, but whatever you want to create in your life, it is possible for you. You just got to believe to start and then do the introspection and the work to create that. But it is possible and you are not stuck. There is a way out. And brother, yeah, I just want to say again, bro, thank you so much. I have just one last final question.
Keep it short, I promise.
Yeah, no,
We'll go on
no
a
worries.
tangent.
All right, so sitting here, I'm at 26 years old right now. I know this was like the time for you. You were doing the real estate thing in Vancouver. Just for the mid 20-year-olds, whatever, for your younger self, any like one sentence, one word, or what like advice would you give to that 26-year-old version of yourself?
Man, I would just have to say, do you? You can try to live for other people, but it's not helping anyone. And no one knows you, even the closest people, like what you feel inside or what's important to you. No one understands why you want to do or do the things you do. And no one will ever understand, even if you try to explain to them. And that's fine. But it means that you really have to listen to your intuition and do what's best for you. And even if that's weird to other people, it doesn't matter. It's people are going to get it at the end of the day when people will eventually see it. But there's too many people in the world that have opinions, which is fine. I shouldn't say it like this because we are bred to have opinions and we're bred to judge people. That's how our brains are actually designed. But what I should say is I wish we were designed better to not care so much about what other people thought about us, because that holds so many of us back from doing what it is that we want that's going to make us happier individuals. So I just think believe in yourself, do what you know is right for yourself, have faith in the universe, and take opinions from people who are on your path or have reached the destination you want to go.
I like that, man.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And just to piggyback off that, I say all the time, we're with ourselves 24/7. We have to live with ourselves. We have to live with our decisions. Your parents or society may push you and say, get this job, go live in this place. They're not the ones that have to wake up and spend 8 to 10 hours a day doing that job. They're not the ones who have to live in that place. You are the only one that has to live with these choices and these consequences. So if we have to be with ourselves 24/7, let's create the life and live the life that allows us to enjoy that time with ourselves as much as humanly possible. Because these people that are trying to project their opinions onto us, they're not the ones who have to follow through with these decisions and choices we do. So
Great
super
point.
powerful, brother. Honestly,
Yeah.
man, this was an absolutely incredible. Yeah, thank you, bro. This was an absolutely incredible pod, bro. I was so engaged in what you had to say and just everything about this, man. Clearly, just coming from so much experience and wisdom, truly from a place of passion where you can genuinely sense the devotion and drive to help others live these happy and fulfilled lives and not have to go through the same years of trials and tribulations and spend so much time to figure this out. And yeah, brother, it's definitely from a heart-centered place and a purpose-driven place. And I really appreciate you, my friend. Also, I appreciate you saying that my audience could have the program for free. That's absolutely incredible. How, if anyone's listening who's interested in the program, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you so that they could actually receive that program?
So I would say for there obviously if it's not too much work for you, they can simply go through you and you and I are in close contact. You can reach me on email at jnicky.com, Instagram at jnickylifedesigns as well. Just send me a message. The program's still about 2 to 3 weeks out. I'm going to say at this point, I feel like I've said that to you in the past, but it has come a long way. So if you just send me an email, say I want on the list is massive. I have hundreds of people that are on that list waiting to get it. I have reasons for why it's not ready yet, as when I was back living with you for a little bit there. but it is in the very final stages. If you want to learn a little bit more, just follow me on Instagram. I'm sharing different pieces of the program in there as well. So yeah, Instagram and email are like my main points of contact. You can find me in either of those places, j@jnicky.com or at jnickylifedesigns. Yeah, there was something that you said something that really hit, and I wanted to touch on it, but I can't remember. Oh, yeah, so being a Canadian, like most of my clients, and I know you're in the States most of the time, or used to be, I'm not too sure now, but most of my clients are Canadians or in the States where I'm spending my time between Panama and Medellin. And I just want to say that when you're the importance of an environment as well, like when you're in an environment where everyone's doing the same thing, it really makes you feel, if you have feelings like this is not maybe the life, or if I'm not happy, even if everyone feels the same way in that place. And I visit Vancouver and I see my family in Ontario all the time, and it's impossible not to see the number of people or that I speak to who just aren't, who want a change. And I hate to say that, but it does seem to be the reality. I'm not saying everyone, of course, but for many people. But even if everyone wants that change, when you're in an environment where everyone is the same, it can feel very hard to be an outsider, to think differently, to make those changes. But what I want to say is, meeting you in Medellin and being here in Panama, in a small town where the entire town here are people who have followed their dreams, which it could simply be opening a small cafe, a surf shop, but buying some real estate here or whatever it might be. That the point is, when you leave that environment and you come to a place like this, or you come to a place like Medellin where you meet Brandon or myself, that you instantly realize there's an entire world of people who have made that shift, who see the possibilities. If you're in this place, and your question was great and it really stuck with me about being like in this place, if you're comfortable but you want to change, but where do I go, is I think just for an eye opener, traveling, if you're spending a lot of time, and I would say Canada and US, which is, for me, it's just because that's where I work with most of my clients, of seeing and putting yourself in an environment of possibility, of people who have done these things, because it's so beautiful to witness. And for me, I made a promise when I said, you know what, I'm done with this and I need to make a change, that I'm not leaving anyone behind. And that's why I deal specifically with people who, for the most part, in Canada, but also US, who are still, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but stuck in that system of you got to work, and that's the only thing that's important. And especially now in today's world, where even if you work, we're not even paying bills anymore. Where at one point we have to say, what's going on here? What change needs to happen? And happiness, I say happiness a lot. Of course, it's not the word I think is most suitable, but it's the word that everyone understands when I say it. So anyways, I want to share that because that came up when you were saying that, just about, and I had that talk with someone here who was traveling and was going home, just about how you get here and it's so different. You see all the people who took that leap, and you start to believe it's possible, where when you're back home, it's just this, you don't have that energy. So that could be a good first step for some people as well. Speaking of which, I have the retreats coming up. So if you're looking for an excuse to get out, yeah.
Hell yeah. Right on, brother. I absolutely love it, man. I couldn't agree more. It's so nerve-wracking to take that leap and travel at first, or start the business. But then when you go to the new location and you meet a bunch of other travelers, or you start the new business and you get connected with different entrepreneurs, now you found this new bubble of like-minded individuals, and you start to, wow, I almost didn't take that leap because I thought I was an outsider. But now this is all normalized, and the people at home are, quote unquote, the outsiders, because they're the ones that aren't on the same wavelength or on the same like-minded as this new group that I found. So you just, like, exactly, like having faith in your intuition, trusting that your tribe is out there, and that when you put yourself into these places, that you will attract those energies and these people that you're supposed to be around and that you're meant to be around. So if you are feeling a little bit like secluded and like an outcast in your hometown, doing the 9 to 5 job in the office, like whatever it is that you want, there's other people who have felt like that and been there too, and have dug themselves out and have the courage to take the leap. So you aren't on your own, and your tribe is out there. You just gotta have faith, take the leap, and take some action. So brother, I couldn't agree more. I think that changing your environment too is like a very quick hack honestly, to change a lot of habits and change your mindset, even if it doesn't have to be moving across the world, across country, but even out of your house, across town. So you just have some new flavor and kind of time to sit with your thoughts and not be bombarded by the same circumstances and conditioning of your regular routine. So I'm on the same page 100%, brother. But don't want to keep you anymore, man. This was an absolutely amazing pod, brother. I genuinely appreciate you so much, man. All your insight, all your wisdom, your stories. I think we can all learn so much from you, brother. I learned a ton from you today. And exactly, these type of conversations absolutely fire me up. So it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today, my friend. I'm excited to get this out. And yeah, any last words? And yeah, we'll be good to go. If you
That's
got
it,
any.
bro. The next one we'll do in person, and when I'm back in Medellin, whenever that is, next couple months. Until
Let's
then,
go.
yeah, I appreciate you, man. I
Hell
appreciate
yeah.
the space and your audience. Man, I've seen you work in person. I know how you act as a human being outside of what you do as a coach, and you're a stand-up dude. You have great energy and you believe in what you do and you get results. So for anyone listening or who follows you, as you must already know as well, Brand is the man. It's always great to be in your company, dude, and we'll be talking anyways. And you're anyone's, for any questions, any support whatsoever, however I can help anyone, reach out anytime whatsoever. Appreciate you, bro.
Hell yeah. All right, gang. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, peace.
Peace.